Hey everyone, I'm Matt Dolan with Dolan Divorce Lawyers in Connecticut, and today I'm going to talk about the forms that you and your spouse will submit to the court if you have a full and final agreement and want to get an uncontested divorce. So first off, you have to pick who is going to be the plaintiff and who is going to be the defendant. If you have a full and final agreement, it doesn't particularly matter who the plaintiff is and who the defendant is. Just the plaintiff will fill out more of these forms. So first, the plaintiff will fill out the summons, which is form JD FM 003. And you can get all of these forms from the Connecticut Judicial website, which is jud.ct.gov. But if you do a Google search for each individual form number, you should find it. So first, there's that summons, which has basic information of names and addresses. You're also going to fill out the complaint if you are the plaintiff. And again, that just has some basic identifying information of the parties. That is JD FM 159. And backing up to the summons, the clerk is going to have to sign off on that document. So don't do the final signature until you are in the clerk's office, which is ultimately where you and your spouse are going to submit these documents. And a number of the documents are going to be notarized, and I'll identify which ones are notarized. So just don't sign the documents that have to be notarized until you are in front of the clerk. So we've got the summons and complaint, then there's the notice of automatic orders, and that form is JD FM 158. Which is just a list of orders that are in place while your divorce is pending, and presumably your divorce will not be pending for particularly long if you are entering into an uncontested divorce, because hopefully the court will sign off on it and finalize your divorce relatively quickly. Then there's the appearance form, and this is one that's going to be filled out by the defendant, and that is JDCL12, that's the form number, and this is just a form giving the court the address and phone number and other identifying information of the defendant. Then there's going to be the certification of waiver of service of process, and this is form JDFM 249. Normally, if you don't have an uncontested divorce, the plaintiff will often have to serve the defendant with divorce papers, but if you're entering into the divorce via agreement, you don't have to serve the defendant. The defendant can instead waive service by signing this form. And this form has to be notarized, so don't sign it until you're in front of the clerk. You're also going to need to submit the certification of notice of public assistance if either you, your spouse, or your children have ever received state or town assistance. And if you have not received assistance, then you do not need to submit this form. And that is form JDFM 175. Now, next up, you're each going to have to submit financial affidavits, which are documents that list your income, your expenses, your assets, and your debts. And those are form JDFM6. You're going to want to spend some time filling out that form and making sure it is accurate. If you have children, you're going to need to submit the Connecticut Child Support Guidelines worksheet. Now, this form can be a little bit tricky, so you're likely going to want to have an attorney help you fill it out. Or if you go to the courthouse, the Family Relations Office might be able to run the guidelines. It's a complicated formula, but they have software that can automatically calculate the child support guidelines and can automatically populate all of the fields. It'll be tricky if you try to write it in manually. And again, an attorney should have the software to fill out the form. So you should contact an attorney if you want help outside of court. If you have children, you're also going to need to submit the advisement of rights regarding income withholding. And this is a form that basically advises the person who is paying child support of the fact that if they fail to pay support, their wages can be garnished. And this is a form that's going to be notarized, so make sure you don't sign it until you are at the clerk's office. You then have the affidavit concerning children, and this is again a form that you only submit if you have children. And this basically gives information as to where the children have lived in the past. It confirms their dates of birth. It confirms that there are no other pending cases or cases that have gone to judgment, just confirming that there are no other custody orders in Connecticut or any other state. You then have the divorce agreement that you are going to submit. Now, again, this is a form that can be tricky to fill out, and that is JD FM 172. And you don't have to use that form. You can enter into a separate divorce agreement that you and your spouse write out. But again, this is something you're probably going to want to work with an attorney on, because they will be able to catch things that you may miss. But if you're not working with an attorney, you can use JD FM 172. That's the agreement form. Now, if you want to have your divorce finalized on the papers, so without you having to go in front of the judge, you're going to have to submit 3 forms. So the first is the request for approval of final agreement without court appearance, and that's JD FM 282, and that's again requesting that the judge rule on your divorce without you having to appear in front of the judge. And then the other 2 forms are the affidavits in support of request for entry of judgment, and both you and your spouse will have to fill out your own forms, and that is JD FM 281. And this form needs to be notarized. This is basically you just confirming to the court that you understand the agreement, you believe it's fair and equitable, you believe it's in the best interest of your children, you understand it's a binding court order, etc. So those are all the forms that you need to submit to the court. If you bring them to the clerk's office of the court that has jurisdiction over your case, they will review the forms, make sure they're all properly filled out, and then they will take them to be reviewed by a judge. And hopefully the judge will just approve the agreement on the papers, and your divorce will be finalized, and you can get a copy of the final judgment from the clerk's office after it is processed. Now, if the judge has any questions about the agreement or feels it's not fair or doesn't understand anything, they may schedule you for an uncontested divorce hearing, which will be a court date on which you and your spouse come into court. You go in front of the judge asks any questions that he or she may have and clarifies anything they may not understand in the agreement, and then hopefully they will approve your divorce at that uncontested divorce hearing. So those are the basics on the forms that you need to submit to the court if you do want to enter into an uncontested divorce. As usual, if you have any questions, you can contact our office. And if you are looking for representation in a divorce or family law case, we would invite you to contact our office as well.